economic domination, China thinks they're going to need more people. That's my guess. I don't know. We have a new caller, 916. Good evening, 916.
Hello.
Hello.
It's Donya.
Good evening, new caller. Hi, Donya. Thank you for joining us. This is the rant
show.
My
pleasure.
So, I'm hoping you have a couple of rants you want to put out here for us. Go ahead, Donya.
Well, actually, I practically have a brand new rant since I had so much trouble getting through to you. I'm all pissed off at my phone company. But that's
okay. I understand that.
Yeah, okay. I think a lot of us do. No, what I called about is I want to rant about talking to dead people.
Okay, go ahead. Let's do it.
Okay, well, see, there's this online Facebook group that's called After Awareness and After Death Communication, and there's like 13,000 people on this group. And even so, every time a new person joins, they start out with, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but, and then they start telling about how they think their uncle tried to get through to them on the phone, or their husband left pictures on their computer. And I'm like, hello, this is the Afterlife Awareness After Death Communication site. Why would we think you're crazy? And it's like, and I don't blame them. I mean, I do the same thing. I'm like, I don't do crazy anymore. I think, do you think people who talk to dead people are creepy? Oh, you know what?
I think they can't deal with acceptance of death of the loved ones.
I do.
I think they're crazy.
Yeah. Well,
and the ability to accept reality.
Well, who's in charge of deciding what reality is? At some point, somebody decided that talking to dead people is not real. People have been doing it for centuries, and a tremendous amount of research has gone into proving that it is real, and yet for some reason, we're supposed to accept somebody else's reality over our own experience. And I just think that's outrageous. And I think it's really like time we got over it. I mean, the whole thing about not talking to dead people is political anyway. The whole thing.
Political policies about it. Has it become outlawed? I've never heard of any political.
It got outlawed back in the time of King Josiah in the Bible.
This is insane.
What?
This is insane. This doesn't belong in this conversation. You're nuts. There's no such thing as talking to dead people, ma'am. And
well, I'm sorry, but you are not the authority on the subject. This is my rant, not yours. Who are you anyway?
You got the whole religion. You got the whole religion thing. People talk to Jesus every day, all day.
Exactly.
But I think they're all
speaking
crazy.
to a dead person.
I think.
Well, they're not really dead, are they? They're spirits. There's no such thing as death. You lose your dusty old body and move on. But, I mean, Catholics are actually better at the religion thing in this sense than Protestants are, because they talk to saints and stuff. They know that life goes on.
Tell us about your last conversation with a dead person. That'd be interesting to hear.
Oh, I talk to Ben all the time. In fact, if you want to go to our website.
I'm sure you do.
www.dozenofben.com. Are you going to listen to me or not? You asked me to tell you about my last conversation, and I'm trying to tell you, and you keep talking.
I don't want to hear you. You're not.
I'm listening.
Mute her, please.
I was invited to rant, and I'm ranting, and you're just being, you know what you're doing? You're being one of the scientific people who's just as dumb as a religious fanatic.
We're having a serious socioeconomic conversation. You're making no sense. Please go away. You're not.
Why would I go away? I was invited to this party. Who are you?
I'm interested in what she has to say.
Well, tell us about your last conversation.
I think there's room enough for all opinions. Let's all listen to each other.
If you want to know about my last conversation with my favorite dead person, you should go to my website, www.thezenofben.com, and quit drowning me out, asshole.
You
want to hear what I have to say or no? You don't want to hear what I have to say. See, that's you scientific people. You've already made up your mind that what you don't believe in isn't true, and so you immediately drown out any information. I want you to describe it. I don't want you to give us a URL to try to get people to go to your website. I want you to
describe it yourself.
Describe it myself.
Right. Don't tell us about a website. Tell us about your last experience. I'll listen to that, but I don't want to hear any advertisements for a URL, okay?
Well, if you don't want to hear it, just, plug up your ears. I want to hear it. I want to hear
I don't want to hear about a website. I want to hear about your experience.
I want to hear the URL.
Okay, I'll tell you the URL. It's thezenofben.com. Has to have the in there. thezenofben.com. That's where our website is, and you can go there and read about my conversations with Ben.
No, why can't you just give us a short description?
I'll check it out.
Okay.
I don't believe in it, but I'll check
it
out.
Cool. You are a very cool person. Well, the thing is, it's like, describe your last conversation with somebody that you talk to every day. I mean, okay, we were talking.
One of my best friends that's alive, and I wished him happy birthday this afternoon.
Oh, that was nice of you.
But he's alive.
Okay.
He's leaving, walking, playing golf, watching football, that kind of thing,
Okay. Well, Ben was discussing with me what he wanted to talk about. Rich invited us to come and rant, and he said he would do, and so I asked him, what do you want to rant about? And he said, first, he wants people to eat more cake frosting, and second, he wants people to not work so hard and not believing in him. And he went on to explain how he visits his friends.
Cake frosting? This was your conversation with the deceased about cake frosting?
He loves cake frosting. That's one of the things that a lot of the mediums...
You sound like a paranoid schizophrenic.
Aren't you nice?
What?
Are you like a psychiatrist or something?
I'm pretty educated, and you sound like a schizophrenic. You're in a schizophrenic.
No, actually, see, this is exactly why people are afraid to talk about their experiences, because people like you immediately jump on them and accuse them of being crazy. And I'm telling you, there's nothing crazy about it. People have always talked to their dead ancestors.
I only got one thing to say to this.
Reasonable conversation, ma'am. But cake frosting, come on, let's get real. I mean,
we have a new caller. Let me introduce caller number 430. Please go ahead.
I just only got one thing to say about this. In the regards of anyone thinking that someone's crazy for talking to anyone who has passed on, or anyone who thinks that they may have paranoid schizophrenia where they hear the voices and actually listen and take them into heed, I got to tell you, for every single person that is on this planet that we call Earth, and every single person that calls himself a human being at all, to each their own, it is called, if you believe it in your heart, well, then that is your reality. It is true. It is. So for each one that views in the day in the window, it doesn't matter to another person. If I believe that this lady was able to speak to her past ones, the loved ones that have passed on, about something as simple as cake frosting, who am I to say that she truly didn't experience that? Because every person, my kids, I could tape them together and send them to go down to the road and back and come back, and they will each tell me exactly what they did, and I swear they're going to tell me a different story, each one, and they did the same thing. You know what I mean? So if you believe
right on.
I'm filled with people with alternative realities that don't fit the norm,
Well,
and I think it belongs in one. I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to put
Well, Frank Zappos himself said, without deviation from the norm, progress is not possible. And so if you cannot deviate from what is a standardized normality in this reality, then you will not ever progress into a higher level of anything.
But he was a musical genius that heard symphonies in his head and then translated them into actual physical musical events. He wasn't talking to dead people. He was hearing musical symphonies in his head, and he could translate them into written music and then find musicians that could play them. That's a whole different ball game. That's not talking.
Well, even still. Well, honestly, I'm just going to be honest and disclaimer. I literally haven't been listening to the show. I've been dealing with my life events before I made a phone call in for a friend. And so I really just jumped literally into the middle of it. But either way, if they're talking about one thing and she believes it to be so, well, then who are you to say that that is wrong because you do not believe the same? That right there is a center conflict on our planet with all of our cultures that we share.
I agree. There's scientific proof, and then there's other proof. You know, the proof that most people don't believe, but still true to the people that believe it.
Exactly. Well, scientists don't know everything. Did you know that, like, I just recently found out that hot water actually scientifically is proven to freeze faster than cold water. And do you know what scientists don't know yet? They still don't understand the science behind why that actually factually occurs. They don't know everything. They can tell you what happens, but they still don't know that.
The scientists used to believe that the earth was flat.
And people used to believe that a woman that was unmarried by the time that she was 30 was apparently either a witch or some kind of cursed thing from the heavens that you shouldn't even bother with.
You're talking
probably talking to dead people.
Evolution of the human brain and technology. You know, people back then that didn't have the opportunity to become educated, read books, talk on phones, read books, go on the internet, learn as institutions of higher education, and so they believed in superstitions, and those caught on within their villages. You know, we're talking about centuries ago. You know, and a good example, the Earth is flat until they start to explore the world through the ocean and then through the air, and they realized it was round.
And you are absolutely.
You've got people believing whatever's politically correct. You know, that's.
Well, you're absolutely correct. If I may just interject. However, let's say if we don't want to go back centuries, well then let's go ahead and just go back 40 years ago. 40 years ago, people believed that people who had a immune deficiency issue like AIDS or something, that you shouldn't be around them or you would catch it. Also, if you were a homosexual, you were believed to automatically be the only perpetrator of something called AIDS. That was only 40 years ago. Let's go back to just 10 or 20 years ago. If you were gay, you were figured you are less than a being and you were not worthy to marry somebody that you actually had your heart placed with. Now, 10 years ago, we can go back and people still believe that you shouldn't be able to have or be around children. You must be a sexual predator if your sexual preference or whatever for your own personal business behind a locked door was anything other than a status norm. So, I mean, all these things, the specific actual
child needs to be locked away from society. And I'll take that in any time. And I don't believe that that's their right behind closed doors whatsoever. The child doesn't have the mind to consent to sexual activity. No adult
I didn't say that.
Right.
I said nothing of that matter. I said that a gay couple up to 10 years ago could not adopt a child to raise whenever a straight couple wanted to give a child away or a person who wanted to be reckless with their sexual activity. I had said nothing about a child consenting to any sexual activity. The minor should never be subject to such things.
You know, what you're describing could be described as either the degeneration of society or the evolution of society mindset. I see it as the degeneration of society because God did not create men and men to marry. You know, there's a reason why there's a different thing down there between the legs, and that's to procreate.
But you see, the thing is that God did still make those people. But this isn't a sexual orientation debate, really, that I'm trying to start. What I was trying to just illustrate was the fact that whenever women were considered mentally unstable, whenever they had their cycle and their menstruation processes and were locked away in a mental institution, along that same actual issue that was so long ago, well, more recently there were simple petty issues such as people worrying way too much about somebody's responsible business they really should as a human conduct. Because personally, I'm not able to judge anybody or tell them what to do, and no one here else is either. And until we pass into the unknown, that's the only judgment that they have to face themselves. So I just wish love and well wishes to all to do exactly what is their human right, what they want, as long as they intend to do no harm and do not take any shit.
What you're seeing is we just lived under a brutal 8 years of a homosexual president.
There's no such thing as a
very scenario, a.k.a. Obama, was a homosexual. So he eventually lifted up a bunch of gay rights into our fate, forced it upon society. And hopefully we can undo that soon. And a lot of Christians are going to prison because they're not going along with it. And I think that's wrong.
Then may I ask a question?
Right. There's no
Then may I pose a question? Why should we do away with, let's say, I'm going to use my brother. My brother was raised by 2 gay men, and he went on to become an electrician, has a wife, and has children. And I was adopted from birth anyway, and so our biological mother had 8 children and led a reckless, risky lifestyle. All right, and she passed away in the 90s. So my question that I pose is, would you strip away the right for those 2 gay men that raised my little brother or my big brother in a better life environment because they had more money and everything else to provide his education and schooling and all the love that they could have gave him, and actually absolutely did nothing wrong to him throughout his whole growing up? Would that be right to strip away the right for them to be able to actually adopt him into their home whenever he really had nowhere that could support him for the rest of his youth?
I can't answer that.
Well, then, but you can answer how gays shouldn't be married or something?
Yeah, there's a quote. There's a quote. Famous man said this. It's not enough to pass laws against deviants and homosexuals. One must work to correct the social conditions that create them.
I think that whenever God said God is love and we should love one another, that whenever God loves everybody, including all those he made, including the gay people who do him wrong, including the murderers, and no sin is no less than one other. So if you lie, you are sinning as much as someone who murdered their brother. All right? I think that whenever God said love, that we should use that in acceptance, and we should never aggress to change anybody, but we should love them and encourage them to do any changes for their soul and salvation. That is the core key critical point.
You're not advocating
God is
the death
both good and evil. God is both good and evil. God is everything.
Well, indeed.
So you can't just say, well, you can't claim one morality is the only morality. You have to take into consideration different people and different things. But here's the thing.
Which is where
people in large groups. You're talking about individuals, but I'm talking about society in general. People in large groups can't live without law.
People in large groups are like a herd of sheep, and yes, they should be governed within reason. However, just like a herdsman who has to herd sheep, one sheep shall go astray, and unfortunately, he must abandon the flock to find the sheep. However, here's the thing. Each sheep produces its own amount of wool. So as you worry about the grouping of the people, yes, people in general, they're absolutely, and dare I say, they're absolutely retarded, and they do need lines to govern themselves so they don't walk off that cliff. But as a people that is grouped together, there are people of individuals who should not be forgotten. Now, each individual is specifically different. That's what makes us all the same. So God says, all right, I'm going to love you all the same. Each one of you I shall love. I have put each hair on your head, and I know each individual hair and how many, each one. And with that, he says the most important commandment that he gave is to love. And so if we forget that, and if we use judgment and hold it against others, then we are not completely exercising in love as 100% as he has asked. Am I wrong?
No. Yeah, you're wrong.
You're wrong.
How am I wrong, please?
Would you put to death a man that sodomized and killed 33 boys and put them under his house like John Wayne Gacy Jr.?
Do I think God loved that man? Yes, I do.
Society decided to put him to death.
Because, God loves Satan, too. He loves Satan and all the demons. No, it is not. I think that is the most important quality.
You cannot have a mass murderer running around free, sodomizing teenage boys, strangling them and burying them under their house without some kind of consequence.
But you see, that's the majesty and that is the majesty and the miraculousness that we do not understand within God's love. It is so far beyond our concept. We can't imagine how God would love something so evil, right?
Yeah, well, that's God's business. But society's business is to get rid of degenerates like that. That disrupt the norm.
I guess you don't believe in prejudice then. You don't believe in this.